Chopper, here to break down an 8-game Friday NBA slate. Do me a favor, as you guys come in the door, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. More games on tap today. Yesterday was a little bit of a smaller slate, but it didn't really impact the results because I've been having kind of a 50-50 week. Was a little bit slow on the betting front, but yesterday, 3 for 3, swept the betting card, won all my bets. They were all Philadelphia 76ers related props. All of them won. It was D'Anthony Melton over 4.5 rebounds. He hit the over in the first half, so that one was pretty easy. PJ Tucker had under 1.5 assists. He finished with 0 assists, so that was pretty sweat-free. And then Tyrese Maxey, under 6.5 assists. He finished with just 5. So overall, 3 bets, all 3 won pretty easily. Was happy with the results on that. Hopefully that bounce back is a sign of more things to come because it was nice to have a really profitable NBA day. And for today, some more good value spots that hopefully we could point out right here. But first, if you guys have not signed up for our Discord channel, 1 week free access by clicking on the link below. There are updates I could give you guys in there that I'm not able to do on YouTube. So for instance, if a player gets ruled out later today, which it's an 8-game NBA slate, it's probably going to happen. Any kind of value that creates in terms of things I'm going to be betting on, I could add everybody in the Discord channel and tell you guys how to take action on any kind of injury news or anything else that happens as far as basketball, football are concerned. And you get 1 week free access by clicking on the link in the description box below. So no risk to yourself. Get a chance to check it out for free. But let's talk about the Friday's NBA games. These are my favorite bets. Now, to start us out here, I have under 5.5 assists for Jason Tatum, and I don't really understand why this number is as high as it is. We have him projected for 4.1 assists today. The under projected to win 76% of the time over at OddsShopper, and that is the fair line for Tatum's assist prop, right around 4.5. 5.5 is a really big number. So if we look at the numbers for Tatum in terms of the assist department this year, he only has 2 games where he's had 6 or more assists, and it was exactly 6 in each of those 2 games. So out of 11 games, he's hit the under on this prop 9 out of 11 times, and overall for the year, he's averaging 4.1 assists, the exact same number we have him projected for today. So now why is the number higher today? I think it's an overreaction to Malcolm Brogdon being out for Boston. So Brogdon comes off the bench for Boston. He is the backup point guard. I thought he was going to play a really big role for this team, and I thought he was a really good bet to win 6th man of the year coming into the season. I don't feel terrible about the bet that I placed on it, but he's definitely not playing the same kind of minutes I was expecting coming into the year. And that's why I think that we're seeing an overcorrection, a little bit of an overreaction to Tatum's assist numbers with Brogdon being out, because Brogdon comes off the bench. Those minutes are staggered with Tatum. And then because Brogdon's also only playing 24, 26 minutes per game, it's not like we're going to expect that the few minutes he shares on the court with Tatum is going to have a massive impact on Tatum's assist numbers now that Brogdon is out. So I like this under number, under 5.5 assists for Jason Tatum. We're sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook today, and they have a great offer to get you $200. Here's what you do to take advantage. Click on the link below to sign up over at DK, and then when you place a $5 moneyline bet on anything, any sport that you like, as long as that team wins, it's going to pay out $200. So I think you should take the lowest amount of risk possible bet a really big college football favorite for Saturday's game. So tomorrow you're going to find some teams that are minus 2,000, minus 3,000 favorites. Take one of those. They're a safe bet to win. And when they do, that $5 is going to turn into a $200 win. So take advantage of the offer. It's not going to be around forever. But when you do sign up, just make sure to click on the link below. So when your team wins, you get credited with the $200. The next bet I'm looking at is over 4.5 rebounds for Christian.
Welcome to Stokastic's On the Contrary. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. We've got just a two-person show for you today, but that just means more time hearing from the GOAT. He's Alex Baker. You can find him on Twitter at AwesomeODFS. And this show is sponsored by PrizePicks, which offers daily prop-based contests. While you're coming in, please give us a like if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel so you can get all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Hit that notification button as well. Don't forget, almost all of our content is also available in podcast form on your platform of choice. Help us out by leaving a 5-star review. Alex, two-man show today. This is gonna be fun. We can just, have a conversation back and forth. How are you doing today?
Good, man. Yeah, excited to just talk some football and not have to worry about like whose turn it is to talk and stuff. I know you did a great job of just making sure that everyone knows whose turn it is, but yeah, and I'm looking forward to picking your brain on this. Like yesterday's showdown slate with Carolina and Atlanta. It's funny because I feel like that's the kind of matchup that guys like you and me get excited about. So it's gonna be hard to top that on this Sunday slate.
I loved it, except for the weather. I kind of hate weather games because it just throws off the whole, like, all of my usual analysis. Like, okay, but should I be playing? And I talked up Laviska Shenault. I was actually really excited about Laviska Shenault because of the weather. I was saying they might use him kind of as a gadgety player. They might, and of course, then he scores a touchdown where they throw it to him behind the line of scrimmage, exactly as and of course, then I look at my exposure. I was like, oh, shoot. I got like throughout my crunches, I got less and less Laviska Shenault. So I was a little bit above the field on both sites. I had like 9% on FanDuel where I was more above the field, but then I didn't have any Eddie Pinheiro because that was the other thing. Like with the weather, I was like, okay, the kickers are not going to be able to kick the ball that well. And then of course, Koo misses 2 extra points, and Eddie Pinheiro is just hitting everything. So did not go my way. Did you have any success on that slate?
I had a couple of decent lineups, nothing too like crazy. So it's if the game doesn't go your way, it's always good to live and fight another day. So I think Sunday could be our day.
Sunday's going to be our day for sure. Yeah, main slate, maybe Sunday Night Football. We're gonna make some money on Sunday. I can feel it. All right. Well, let's start off by talking about a little bit of strategy on this slate. It's an interesting one because Justin Fields looking a little bit chalky. Of course, we'll talk about position by position as well. So any just general strategy thoughts on this slate, or are you ready to jump in to quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we got to talk about Justin Fields a little bit. We can wait if we want, but like it's really interesting because last week there were just 3 players that you just needed to have to win. And it didn't really matter who else was in your lineup, but if you had Justin Fields, you had Devontae Adams and Joe Mixon, like you would have like won a ton of money. Like I only had 1 out of 3, which was Mixon, so I was kind of like had to scroll down a while to see my lineups, to be honest, but I think like now it's like he was so high on last week and he like won everyone who played him money, so I feel like people are gonna want to run it back, especially like versus the Lions. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what people do here.
Yeah, that was a rough week for me last week. I was under the field on all 3 of those guys. Looked like a lot of sharp players were actually on Joe Mixon, yourself included. I somehow did not end on much Joe Mixon, so that didn't help me out. I think Devontae Adams was actually not in the Millie Maker winning lineup, if I remember correctly. It had Tyreek Hill instead, though, which was you needed one of those 2 guys along with Fields and Mixon. So I actually.
The thing with Mixon that was really interesting is the Panthers defense was the team facing Cincinnati. and Panthers D was very chalky, right? So like picking Mixon was kind of like a leverage play against defense, which is something like people probably don't think about a lot, but it just adds a little bit of EV just knowing that if you like hit that running back, you're eliminating 15% of lineups or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it worked out that way exactly. He hit off and the defense didn't do anything at all. So yeah, that was a great leverage play. Let's talk about that winning lineup for a second, because I'm just curious your thoughts on the winning lineup actually double stacked Justin Fields, which I thought was kind of contrarian in and of itself, because most people, when you're playing Justin Fields, a lot of people were playing him naked. Some people were playing him. I myself, in the lineups that I had him, was only forcing in one receiver receiving option with him. Do you think that that's a good strategy to kind of overstack in situations like that where people might be more inclined to skinny stack?
Yeah, I mean, I think stacking more players is never a bad idea. Like, when you get a rushing quarterback like Justin Fields, like that does mitigate your need to stack two receivers. Where if it's a guy like Aaron Rodgers who doesn't really run, like then you definitely want two receivers, at least based on my analysis in the past. So, but like stacking a second receiver with a guy like Justin Fields, like it's funny because what you're probably banking on is the Bears to pass the ball a lot, which I don't believe they ended up doing. It was like
No.
they did just enough, and like having Fields was important enough that like I think that Cole Kmet had a great game, and Darnell Mooney was like I don't think he like helped or hurt your chances if I recall correctly. So it ended up working out. Was it a great play? Like I never love guys like Fields because like the Bears are such a run heavy team that like it just means it's less correlation with your players, but it's hard to argue with the scoreboard last week.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I'm looking at. I pulled up the stats here. So Mooney was 7 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown. So it was the 7 receptions, obviously in PPR, helped a lot with Mooney. And as you said, he was a player you didn't need him. He was fine to have in your lineup, and obviously worked out for the Millie Maker winner. But then Cole Kmet had 5 receptions for 41 yards and 2 touchdowns. Was seemed a little bit more necessary there. But as you said, it was not because Fields was throwing the ball. He threw for a total of 123 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was just a lot of short throws. Oh, Mike says the lineup is actually up on the screen. So it was just, they had a lot of receptions between the two of them, but still just not a lot of yards for the entire team. And then Fields, of course, added 178 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So, man, what a crazy week that was, but pretty fun for that guy.
It was brutal in our like team chat. I was like, "Oh my god, Justin Fields is 12% owned. That's like crazy." I think I actually used the word "sheesh," kind of channeling Ian Hartitz a little bit, and then like immediately after I said that, he ran a 65-yard touchdown, and so
yeah,
it was instant karma.
I would have had 0 Justin Fields if I had known the ownership there. I think I want to say it was 14%. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it was some ridiculous number from my perspective. Now I'm pulling up my phone because Mike says we've got the lineup on there. Yeah, so Fields at 14.2% in the Millie. Mixon at 12.2 is reasonable. Ramondre Stevenson actually made it into the winning Millie lineup, which was kind of interesting. I was heavy on Ramondre and he didn't do all that well.
Yep.
Christian Kirk made it in there. Tyreek, yeah. So we had Tyreek Hill as the run back instead of Devontae Adams, and then Kenneth Walker, obviously a smash, and then Patriots defense also really worked out. 26 fantasy points, kind of almost needed to have them as well. So
and Deion Jackson was super popular last week, so that was like leverage against him.
True, yeah. So that worked out. Yeah. So congrats to that player. That was phenomenal, phenomenal lineup. All right, we can move on to this slate though. Talk about some quarterbacks. Let's start by talking about chalk that you're willing to eat and fades among the chalkier quarterbacks. So we have a number of quarterbacks this week who had some ownership, and I went away from the quarterback screen, so let me pull that back up, but you might have it open already. Let's just start there. Do you have chalk that you're willing to eat or fades among the chalkier quarterbacks this week?
So aside from Fields, Mahomes and Tua Tagovailoa, and then Josh Allen's kind of weird because like it's looking like he won't play. So if he does play, he could be kind of chalky. But like the thing about Tua and Mahomes is like I feel like they're like more good chalk when they're chalk because teams run the ball like at such a low rate that it just like makes it so your path to victory is much wider. Like one thing that I love is like your team that you rostered, they are up in the game and still passing. So with some of these really high pass rate teams like Miami and Kansas City, you see that sometimes because like for Miami, it's like they just don't run the ball very well, to be honest, and they pass very well. So it makes a ton of sense. Now, Jeff Wilson being in the mix is interesting in Miami. Like that could change their tendencies, but like I don't really think it's going to make a huge difference, to be honest. So what about you? What kind of what are the high owned teams that you're considering?
Yeah, so I think Tua, I mean, makes a lot of sense. Just looking at the top stacks tool, as you know, 100 rating on the Dolphins. We've got Tua at 9.2% ownership, 20.9% top stack odds for Miami. So I do like Tua quite a bit. I think that I'm on the same page as you with Fields. We've got him at 15.4%. Wouldn't even surprise me to see that go up against Detroit. Like I think that might be a spot where we get surprised by the ownership with the success he had last week, plus the matchup with Detroit. Of course, the 6,500 price tag does make it a little bit more likely that maybe the ownership doesn't get all the way up there. But I'm with you on Fields being a little bit of a fade. I mean, we don't have a ton of chalk. Do you think that you would go to any Case Keenum? So I think that obviously the top stack tool is assuming Josh Allen at 9.7% projected ownership. No idea what it's going to be if it is Case Keenum. I'm curious, would you be interested in playing any Case Keenum if Josh Allen is ruled out? And I should say the latest is Josh Allen is expected to practice today is the latest that I've seen. So we'll see what that turns into.
Yeah, I feel like I saw something about how he didn't actually end up practicing, but
Okay.
let me see. It looks like everyone's been posting about Josh Allen recently, so it's hard to keep up with all the latest. But so if Allen is ruled out, then I'm kind of assuming this line really is factoring in that to a significant extent because Buffalo is only a 3.5 point favorite versus Minnesota. I would expect them to be more like a 7 point favorite if Allen's in. We'll have to see where that moves if Case Keenum's starting. But Buffalo is a very good team, so like it's like what value are you losing in Diggs' projection being lower and the other guys? It's like you're kind of making up for it a little bit with the value at quarterback with Keenum. But it's tough because Diggs, he's like close to one of the highest salary players this week. So it's going to make Diggs look a lot worse as well as the rest of the Bills. So I'm kind of torn. It could go either way. Like probably a guy that I'll have a little bit of, but not excessive amounts. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm probably in the same boat as I mean, Vikings defense is not great. And Case Keenum has had some success before. Minneapolis Miracle, as was pointed out to me earlier this week. So that was fun. Now he's coming back for his revenge against the Vikings, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if you call it that, but Vikings defense isn't great. Case Keenum will be cheap. Maybe I'll have some interest if the field isn't getting there. Definitely an interesting spot. I also think that though I probably will lower my ownership to guys like Diggs. I'm probably not going to have as much exposure to Diggs if we have Keenum in there instead of Josh Allen. Like I think he could still go over owned just because of what we've seen, and we see it happen all the time that these great receivers do great with quarterbacks who are on their level, and then once they get the backup in there, the receiver fails as well. So I think that I will lower my exposure to all of the other pieces in Buffalo if it is Case Keenum, but I might still try a few stacks where I assume that Keenum is going to succeed and then play those guys in those stacks. I think that's a reasonable approach to play those guys, but mostly only play them in stacks with Keenum.
Yeah, definitely. Like stacking, it mitigates like the disadvantage of having lower projections. So basically what you're trying to do with your stack is like you got all these guys that aren't very good, but when they do well, they're going to do well together. So that would be kind of the case with Case. You see what I did there?
That was good. That was really good.
But yeah, it's harder to get excited about because of the pricing a little bit, or it's not like like you can roster plenty of bad quarterbacks for cheap every week, right? So like usually the top receivers are reasonably priced on a team like Indiana with Pittman or something. So Like with Diggs, he's super expensive, so that is a big factor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's Case Keenum to Diggs. Larry C was just bringing up Diggs. Why would Diggs want revenge? He got paid and went to a Super Bowl contender, et cetera, et cetera. And I was saying, no, I was talking about Case Keenum might want revenge on the Vikings, but that was the Minneapolis Miracle, was Case Keenum to Diggs. So maybe they'll do that again against the Vikings. I hope not,
man.
but it could happen. That's probably my favorite play of all time in football, the one that I got most excited about. But yeah,
what's the opposite of a miracle? I feel like it could be called that.
Disaster. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, like I feel like disaster isn't like divine enough. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know what the opposite of a miracle is. That's a good question. All right. So aside from that, so just looking at the other one that I want to ask you about among the chalkier quarterbacks is Patrick Mahomes, because he looks great in the tools. What does it do for you now that they have Kadarius Toney coming in? It's a little bit more of a muddled situation. Does that make it harder for you or easier for you to want to play some Mahomes stacks when he is looking good in the top stacks tool? 15.1% projected ownership on Mahomes, 18% chance to be in the top stack. But we've got like 5 different receivers you could theoretically play for the Chiefs. I mean, we want to rule out Sky Moore because he hasn't done anything, but he had a few deep balls thrown his way last week. So I don't even know if you can entirely rule out Sky Moore. Does it make you more or less inclined to play Patrick Mahomes now that we have so many receiving options for the Chiefs?
I think, well, I mean, you always got Travis Kelce as a great stack option. So, like, Mahomes to Kelce is like enough in general. Like, they have a 31-point team total. We saw Kelce have 4 touchdowns not long ago, so it's definitely in the range of outcomes. So, like, the question is like, is it worth stacking Kansas City without Kelce and picking like Juju and McCole Hardman or something? Like my general approach would be just to take Kelce plus one other guy. My favorites would be MVS, Hardman, like just because they're dirt cheap on DraftKings. Where Kadarius Toney, it's very difficult to project him for a significant role this week. After last week, he only ran routes on 9% of plays. But Tony's workload going up is going to hurt Sky Moore and Justin Watson. So like those guys, I'm completely writing off. Could it bite me? Like absolutely, because you have the deep ball. Like we saw Gabe Davis get like 16 points in one play, so it's definitely an impossible outcome. But we just gotta try to go for the probable outcomes, not try to go for all the possible outcomes.
Yeah, that's a good call. This is a main slate. This isn't showdown. We don't need to go for all these cheap guys who are pretty unlikely to do much. You know, maybe they score 1 touchdown, but they're probably not putting up 35 fantasy points. So maybe you don't need to be playing these guys as much. The boy from Cali asks, can you run Mahomes naked just this particular week? Thoughts? I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to let you answer anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it like it, I think people get stuck on the fact that it can work when not realizing like not everything that can work is like a good strategy. Like we saw, with like Justin Fields, like you can run Justin Fields naked, but like he had a huge game and Cole Kmet got there. Like so that's it's never a strategy I'm super high on. So I'm kind of like I'm looking at Kansas City just real briefly. I feel like Kadarius Toney is more like a slot receiver, so I'm trying to figure out who's like getting all the slot routes in Kansas City. It looks like it's split up between Juju, Hardman, and MVS, so they just rotate everywhere on the team. So I don't even really know who Toney would impact like in particular.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough call with that's why it's such a mess to me. It's like I can't really tell who's taking on who's cutting into whose role here. Yeah, it's a tough situation. So you think that you would maybe just run? So you're saying you would run without Mahomes in some Kansas City stacks with maybe like MVS and Kelce. You would just leave out the quarterback to save some salary there and use a different quarterback.
Well, no, I think I was more thinking like, should we fade someone because of Toney? It looks like Juju and MVS and Hardman all like run out of the slot, so it doesn't really provide much clarity. But like the problem with the 2 receivers on the same team without the quarterback is that they're just not correlated with each other. So you're not getting any benefit from having those 2 players together. there could be a case if it's running back receiver where maybe if the receiver has a big game, then more rushing attempts could occur afterwards. But with two receivers, I don't really see much argument for it.
Okay. And I guess just one final thing before we move on to our contrarian plays. Would you be requiring a run back? So I know sometimes you don't require a run back in certain situations. I'm pulling up my sheet here. So we've got, the Chiefs are playing the Jaguars this week. And actually, a lot of the Jaguars receivers look pretty good this week. So maybe this isn't the best, but would you require a run back from the Jaguars with your Chiefs stacks?
I don't think it's a bad idea, like just because if the Chiefs put up a lot of points, their rushing rate's going to go up over the course of the game. They are a team though that does continue to pass until they've like really sealed it away. So I do feel like Kansas City is a team I'd consider not stacking because like okay, so their team total is like 30, right?
Yep.
And that's 4 touchdowns. So if Mahomes gets 4 touchdowns, you're golden. Like that's all you need. Like you're not necessarily required to go for an outlier of like 6 touchdowns or something to win a tournament. So, but it does in that situation you gotta really nail the other players. So it goes both ways.
Okay. All right, let's jump into some contrarian plays. This is on the contrary, so we've been talking about the chalk, but let's get into who are your favorite contrarian quarterbacks this week.
Okay, so Matthew Stafford would be one, but it looks like he may not play due to concussion.
Right.
We're waiting for clarity there. If he does play, like I'd be pretty interested. But really anyone aside from the 3 guys that we've been talking about is pretty low owned. So I mean it's hard to pick just one player. Vegas is certainly an option with like versus Indiana. Like you got Carr and Devontae Adams making a really nice stack. Waller's on the IR, so you can kind of bank on Moreau. Another one that stands out maybe is Dallas facing Green Bay, where just because Dak is like only projected to be 2% owned, and that's actually a pretty good offense. So I think that could easily pay off. So that one really stands out. What's looking good to you?
Yeah, so a couple of interesting ones. So I talked about this with Lofty a little bit. Lofty brought up Jacoby Brissett as being sort of interesting against this Miami defense. And we were talking about how, like, obviously Tua looks great, but it's really expensive to play Tua with Waddle and Hill. Maybe it's feasible to play instead play Jacoby Brissett with Amari Cooper, and it looks like David Njoku is not playing, so I guess it'd be Harrison Bryant, cheap tight end from Cleveland, and then you can throw in Waddle and Hill as a bring back. Do you think that's viable, or is that? I mean, it doesn't look great in the top stack. So we have Brissett at 4.8% projected ownership, 2.6% chance of being optimal. But this Miami defense has been pretty bad, and it could be, if Cleveland can keep up, this could be a really high scoring game. Would you have any interest in doing something like that, like Brissett with Cooper and somebody else cheap, maybe Harrison Bryant, and then a Waddle and Hill run back?
Yeah, it's definitely intriguing. I mean, like we're talking about contrarian options, so everyone's on the table. Like Cooper is a good player. Donovan Peoples-Jones is reasonably priced, and then Harrison Bryant might be one of the top tight ends of the week now that Njoku is ruled out. So I think there's legs there. The only trouble is like it's like if Cleveland has a game script that they're passing a lot, it means they haven't done very good to that point, right? So it does like narrow your range of getting there a little bit compared to a team where with their like they could just build a lead passing, where Cleveland isn't really like as likely to do that as a team that passes more.
Okay, so you're saying because they typically want to run the ball, Cleveland in particular is a team that, it probably means that they've been failing in the first half if they get to throwing the ball a lot in the second half.
Exactly. So it's like you got more passing attempts in that game script, but it comes with a catch that like you already know that the team has been doing poorly.
Yep. Okay. That's a good point. All right. So Larry C asks, would you include any running backs in your quarterback double stacks? See, for example, the Giants with Saquon Barkley, Jacksonville with ETN. Do you have like a list of running backs who you include in your quarterback double stacks, or is that kind of a week to week kind of thing? I made my fantasy cruncher video last week, and I kind of just looked at who have had the most targets among running backs. And there was kind of an easy gap there, and I think both of those guys, to me, could potentially be included in there. But do you see it differently? Do you think you would include Saquon Barkley, ETN, any specific running backs that you might include in a double stack with your quarterback, or do you not like to include running backs?
I like running backs as part of the stack. Like it's a 2-man stack only option for me or more. So like it kind of like you're getting a little bit more correlation because the running backs today, like almost all of them catch passes. Like it's funny because Cleveland is one exception with Chubb, but yeah, so you get a little bit of extra correlation, and there's also like the fact that if the quarterback does well, that could generate more rushing attempts if they're in a positive game script. So yeah, I think that running backs is always a great option for that second man as part of your stack.
Okay. Yeah, I like that call too. So you would not play, like, for example, you wouldn't play Daniel Jones with just Saquon. It would only be, you say, in 2 or more players in the stack.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think it's like completely off the table, but like the factor that I look at is what percentage of the salary you're allocating is correlated, right? So like with Saquon, like more than half his points come from rushing, so it's like more than half of the salary that's part of your stack is not like correlated. Where if you just look at like Devontae Adams, like 100% of that salary is going towards your stack, so to speak.
So I'm just looking at some of these other players that people have brought up in chat, and as is usually the case, the quarterbacks that get brought up in chat are often the guys that I look at and I think that looks like a great play, and then I look at the top stacks and I say, oh, there's negative leverage there, because they're the guys that kind of seem obvious to players that are just like football fans. You look at them, so guys like Trevor Lawrence, like he seems like a great play to me against Kansas City. Not a great defense, they have a great offense. Jacksonville's going to need to keep up. Trevor Lawrence has some rushing upside, but then I look at the tools and I see 5.8% projected ownership on Trevor Lawrence, 4% chance of Jacksonville being the top stack. Do you think that there are ways to run Trevor Lawrence out there that would make sense? I mean, do you just have to get Contrarian elsewhere, or is he somebody that you're going to be under the field on? What's your plan for guys like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is a pretty appealing option this week. Like whenever you got a team facing Kansas City, that's like a great matchup for quarterbacks because it might not suggest that to date in this year's data, but like like Kansas City, you can kind of bank on them having some success. And like if Jacksonville is going to win this game, they're going to need more points than average to come away as the winner. So they definitely, I feel like teams know that going in. They're trying to go for high outlier outcomes, and the natural tendencies of Jacksonville are pretty neutral as far as run pass. So there could be a lot of passing attempts in this game. And Zay Jones and Kirk look like good options. And Ben Ross's boy, Evan Ingram, always a good option because tight end, it's really hard to find a good value this week or this year. So and Etienne as well, like he's getting most of the work running and receiving, so that's kind of a game script proof option. So how do you feel about Jacksonville?
Yeah, they look good. And I guess this is a situation where I need to be looking at the other column too. So that we have negative leverage when you just look at their top stack odds, but then I look at their top value stack odds and they're at 5.7%. So basically exactly neutral from their ownership on Lawrence and then top value stack odds. So that maybe that makes Jacksonville look a little bit more interesting. As you said, you could include Travis Etienne in a double stack with Trevor Lawrence. So I think I do like Trevor Lawrence. I think I'm going to be playing some Trevor Lawrence this weekend. It's a little bit harder for me with Daniel Jones against Houston. My guess would be they're going to be running the ball a little bit more with Saquon. We have 7.6% projected ownership on Daniel Jones, just a 1.8% chance of being the top stack, 4.5% chance of being the top value stack. So looks a little bit over-owned to me, makes me a little bit less inclined. Do you have thoughts on Daniel Jones as a play?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like we saw Justin Fields, like if we look at his projections running the ball, like last week, it wasn't any different than Daniel Jones this week. So like there's always that potential for like just an absurd game in any circumstance for a guy that runs like Daniel Jones. The stacking options are a little bit tougher to nail down. With Daniel Bellinger out this week, that's like one tight end that like you're going to a guy that's probably not very good if you're going to Tanner Hudson. But and with wide receiver, they've been a team that runs a really deep rotation. Marcus Johnson had been getting like most of the playing time at least, as well as Wan'Dale Robinson. But with Kenny Galladay coming back, I'm worried that could impact Marcus Johnson. So Wan'Dale Robinson is really the only receiver I feel confident in. So there's not a lot of factors like really pulling me towards New York Giants this week, aside from Saquon.
Okay, so I'm just going to quick hit on a couple more that were brought up in chat that I think are kind of interesting. Marcos Amparo brought up Russell Wilson. We've completely like, are we writing off Russell Wilson? Is he just bad now? Can we just forget about Russell Wilson? Because we've got him coming in at 2% projected ownership. He's only 5,900. Do you have any interest in running out Russell Wilson with like Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy? Do you think that's still a viable stack potentially against a Tennessee defense that has not been all that great so far this year? Where we've got the 15th against the pass. I guess Titans defense has been middling against the pass. I thought they were a little bit worse against the pass. They are first against the rush. So maybe it's a little bit of a pass funnel, arguably. Do you have any interest in Russ stacks?
Well, we're on the contrary, so we got to consider it, right?
That's right.
But okay, so Denver pretty neutral run pass this year. And then what I'm seeing here, the over under is only 38.5. That's the lowest on the slate. And Denver is a 3-point underdog. They actually have the lowest team total on the slate. So like I think that there's always potential in any NFL team, but like going to the team that's like in the worst spot for my stack like is not usually a strategy I go for.
Okay, so not your favorite option.
I'm not saying it can't be like a good strategy. It's just
right.
like there's like a lot of better strategies you can come up with.
Yeah. Okay. So not the first place you're going, but yeah, I could see it. And then Danny Green says Kenny Pickett. Do you have any interest now? Chase Claypool is out of the picture. Maybe a little bit more condensed options for the Steelers. Maybe Deontay Johnson. Maybe they finally go to George Pickens a little. I mean, he had 0 fantasy points in the last game, I believe, George Pickens. So maybe he becomes a little bit more involved. Do you have any interest at all in a Steelers stack against the Saints defense?
Yeah, I'm pretty interested. With Pickett, like I don't think they've been particularly successful so far. He's only averaging about 6 yards per attempt, but he had a little bit on the ground. Claypool moving out of town. I don't think it really helps anyone because like Deontay Johnson and George Pickens had already been out on the field every snap. And Claypool wasn't really a very high target share guy. So I'm not really going to WR3 here. But I think you can make a nice stack. Like New Orleans is a very tough defense, so it's not a high percentage play, but I like the fact there's 3 options that all have like good target shares.
Okay, and then just the one final contrarian stack that I'm going to bring up, have to bring them up. My Minnesota Vikings, 1.8% projected ownership on Kirk Cousins, 4.7% chance of being the top stack against Buffalo. Obviously, a tough spot against Buffalo in Buffalo. Do you think you'll be playing any Kirk Cousins this weekend?
I'm definitely thinking about it. Like it's going to depend a lot on if Josh Allen is active. If Josh Allen's active, I think it could be a pretty good spot where they're gonna have to throw the ball a lot. And they've been good when they do throw, or average when they throw this year, but you got Justin Jefferson who's been fantastic. So I'm definitely considering Minnesota, but the pricing does look like it's working against you this week because these guys are expensive.
Yeah, just a little bit expensive. All right. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about, or should we move on to running backs?
Who's the backup in LA? I'm kind of curious. It probably doesn't matter, but
God.
if it is
I don't know.
Matthew Stafford being out this week, like Arizona's defense isn't great. So Wolford has actually been pretty confident when he has played in the NFL. He's dirt cheap, so I'll keep an eye on that.
All right. Yeah. People saying Wolford in chat. That you're saying so. I guess we consider Wolford. All right. So we'll consider that if Stafford is out. Obviously, you like Stafford if he is in. All right, that'll do it for quarterbacks. So guys, let me tell you about a great offer we have for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 3 days for free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, all free, zero risk. Sign up now. The link is in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in this offer. All right, Alex, let's move on and talk about some running backs. We'll jump back up to the chalk of running back and talk about anybody that you are, any chalk that you're willing to eat, and then any fades among the chalkier running backs.
Yeah, Dameon Pierce looks like super chalky. They're facing the Giants this week. He's been, pretty good. Like the thing you gotta like about Pierce is his rushing share has been the highest of any running back in the league this year. Like they don't have a great offense, so it's tough to really, count on it from week to week. But I think it's like he actually has been getting a lot of routes recently as well. So we've seen his routes increase from like about a quarter of the routes when he first came into the league, and then it was in the mid 50s the last 2 weeks. So as far as percentage of routes, so he is getting work as the primary receiver running back in Houston right now, and his target share is pretty good, 20% so far. So I do feel like Dameon Pierce, he might be more game script proof than you think. So I'm thinking it might be harder to get away based on the price. Although I do like Saquon Barkley on the other side of that game as possible leverage against him. But which chalk running backs are standing out to you?
I'm just looking at the boom bust tool. Dameon Pierce just jumps off the page. 25% projected ownership, 34% chance of being optimal. He's only 6,300 against a pretty bad Giants defense. Can I say that they're bad? Let me pull up, make sure that I'm. Yeah, the Giants 23rd against the pass, 24th against the rush in terms of DVOA. So a pretty good spot for Dameon Pierce. Of course, the Texans are only expected to put up, they have an implied team total of 17 points. So not great. I guess that might not be updated. That is from Wednesday, so it could have changed since then. Maybe they've come up a little bit, but not expected to put up a ton of points. But I do think that I'm willing to eat some Dameon Pierce chalk. And as far as Saquon, Saquon again, 19% projected ownership, 19.2% optimal at 8,600. I definitely am going to have some interest in Saquon as well. Derrick Henry is another guy coming in at 18.9% projected ownership. We have him in the optimal 24% of the time. Are you going to be playing some Derrick Henry as well against the Broncos defense that has been pretty bad against the run?
Yeah, I think Derrick Henry is always a great spend up just because, like, especially now with Malik. Well, okay. So I forgot about Tannehill may be back this week, I believe. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Like, honestly, it doesn't really matter much because it's like they have zero confidence in any of the receivers. Oh, you know what? I think Treylon Burks, is he also back this week?
Oh, he might be. I think he was designated for return. I don't know if that means he's playing. Let me see.
It doesn't always mean that,
right?
So, but it does say the latest is he does plan to play this week. So, it's a little bit hard to read the tea leaves here because all right, Tannehill didn't fully practice, so I guess he'll probably be back in. That's like the impact on Henry. It probably doesn't make a huge impact, and he's always the number one option in Tennessee, and they are favored in this game. So that Henry is always a good option if you got the cash.
Okay, so you're with me on Henry. What about fades? Anybody who's projected for a good amount of ownership that you're looking to fade?
Well, I think one fade could be Travis Etienne. He's been great so far this year, so like that's why he's popular, right? But if we're talking fades, you were just looking at a team that might be outgunned here when they're facing Kansas City. So he does get work in the receiving aspect of the game, but it only makes up about a third of his projection. So like that seems like an option where he could get game scripted out. So I might go to like Dameon Pierce over Etienne, but yeah, I don't think Etienne's bad. So it's tough to really commit to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we should state that when either you or I are talking about fading, we're not talking about full fading. So I think that I am going to be fading Etienne relative to his ownership at 21.2%. We have him in the optimal 12% of the time. I think that I'm likely to be closer to maybe even under 12% just because he is 7,100. So the price has come up pretty significantly on Etienne. And the ownership is still there, and they're facing a Chiefs defense. Maybe they're going to need to be throwing the ball more. Now, of course, he's involved in the passing game too. So I think that I'm probably going to be under the field on ETN as far as fades. As far as being under the field, I'd say that he's the one guy who stands out to me among the higher owned guys. All right, so we've talked about the chalk a good amount. Let's jump into talking about some contrarian options. Anybody that you love who's under say 15% projected ownership?
Yeah, I mean, love is a strong word. Najee Harris would be interesting, but they have been talking about Jalen Moore and getting more work in Pittsburgh, so that's a tough pill to swallow. So I'm going down to David Montgomery maybe, where it's been pretty fluid between him and Herbert, but Montgomery has dominated the work in the receiving game. So what if it is he's going to be out there more of the snaps, most likely, even though the rushing sure has been more fluid. So Montgomery at low ownership, it seems like good leverage against Justin Fields. If Fields runs less this game and Montgomery gets a lot of the work, like say Chicago's leading, which is somewhat likely to happen versus the Lions. I'm kind of talking myself into Montgomery more and more. What do you think?
Yeah, I was all about Montgomery. We did the ownership show on Wednesday, and seeing the ownership there, the natural leverage spot. I mean, we just talked earlier on the show about how Joe Mixon was in a great leverage spot against the opposing defense. Well, same thing with Dave Montgomery being a natural leverage spot against all that Justin Fields ownership. Makes a lot of sense to me and looks good just in a vacuum. 7.7% projected ownership, 15.4% chance of being optimal. Now we've talked about, trying to avoid mistakes sometimes, like things like, so I think that I sometimes fall into the trap of this could work, so I want to play it. What about like Khalil Herbert? He's a player that sometimes I play these backup or like the shorter part of the timeshare running backs when they are in great spots. Like last week, I played a lot of AJ Dillon in the same spot against the Lions defense. I thought had a chance to work out, and it maybe had a better chance. He got stuffed at the goal line a couple times, but didn't really put up many fantasy points. Would you have any interest in trying out a guy like Khalil Herbert at 2.4% projected ownership, 5,900 against the Lions, or is it just Montgomery for you here?
I think it's intriguing, whenever you got a team in a great spot to think outside the box like that. But it'd be a lot more appealing if Montgomery was higher owned than he is right now, because it just seems like he's not going to be super popular this week. So you're not really getting a ton of leverage on the field by pivoting from Montgomery to Herbert, and your floor is next to nothing. So it can be something where it absolutely killed your lineup, right? And like we saw this week, you don't need to hit every play, but if you hit 8 out of 9 plays and the other play does, okay, that's probably enough. So Herbert can be the thorn in your side if you pick him.
Yeah, for sure. If you get everything else right, and then you have Herbert in there, probably not going to be too happy. That's actually happened to me where I played Mike Boone, and in a similar situation a couple of years ago, I played Mike Boone maybe against the Lions. He was the backup. Everybody was playing Alexander Madison because Dalvin Cook was out. So I was like, I think Mike Boone could be the guy. He got stuffed at the goal line. I needed 4 more points to win $100,000. So I made that mistake. And it was and there were other options at the same price tag who I think Chase Edmonds or somebody went off. So it was damn it, why did I do that? Yeah. So I have made that mistake. Any other contrarian running backs that you're really into this week?
Zeke, I guess. He's in Dallas. I mean, they have a matchup versus Green Bay, so not the easiest, but he's been the guy that. Okay, so I think he might be lower projected on right now because maybe he's questionable, even though they said he's playing. So we'll have to see on Sunday what Zeke's ownership is, but he's gotten 5 out of 7 goal line attempts. So if there are a lot of goal line touchdowns, I do feel like Zeke would be the guy, not Tony Pollard.
Okay, so Packers defense 31st against the rush. Do you think you're going to be fading Pollard, playing some Zeke?
It's tough to say fading Pollard since he's not projected to be high
good point
either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Zeke is it's like there's a couple of contrarian options every weekend running back. It's not usually like the most favorable to go with contrarian because there's so many like really high projected players, but Zeke would be one of the guys I'd look at.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Zeke coming in at 3.1% projected ownership, Pollard at 3%. And then you look at the optimal rate. We've got Zeke in the optimal 8.9% of the time, Pollard at 3.8. So just a massive difference in terms of optimal odds. So Zeke, they both have some positive leverage, but Zeke has clearly much better positive leverage. And they're, Pollard's more expensive. So that all makes sense to me. Just looking through, DeAndre Swift. I don't know that I can go to DeAndre Swift right now. He's already said he's not going to be, he might not be fully healthy all year. We have slight positive leverage on DeAndre Swift. It is a nice spot though against the Bears. Not a great defense. What about Jamal Williams? Do you think he'll be going to any Jamal Williams or either Jamal Williams or DeAndre Swift? We have Jamal Williams at 13.5% projected ownership. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, they are facing the Bears, so I guess that could be a good matchup. It's if Swift isn't out, like I do find it a lot tougher to go to Jamal Williams. So I haven't seen any indication that Swift will be out this week. So Jamal Williams, he's kind of like a contrarian play that's not contrarian almost. So I don't really see much point going there from projection or ownership standpoint.
Okay, I'm just pulling up the DeAndre Swift played. Okay, so DeAndre, I mean, he only played 10 snaps last week. Do you think that DeAndre Swift is just going to be worked back in and playing more throughout the season? Because right now it just looks like last week we had Jamal Williams playing 61% of snaps, DeAndre Swift just playing 16%. So it feels to me like right now, at least maybe the field is playing it as though Jamal Williams is the workhorse here and DeAndre Swift is kind of worked in more as the backup. But are you not confident that that's what we're going to see going forward?
No, I'm not confident in that at all because Swift is the more talented player, right? So if it's going to go anyway, it's going to go towards Swift and away from Jamal Williams. It's just really hard to predict when that will occur because of the saga with Jamal Williams, where he's been extremely limited this year so far. So they were pretty transparent about their plan last week, so we'll have to see if there are any more reports.
Okay. All right. Any other running backs that you want to talk about?
No.
All right. Well, then we can move on. I'll tell you about our sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks offers daily prop-based contests, no sharks, optimizers, or mass entries at PrizePicks. You create a 5-player lineup. You can net up to 10x your entry fee. Use your knowledge of multiple sports with cross-sport entries. Obviously, very relevant right now with all the sports going on. I guess no more MLB now, but we still have basketball, football, hockey, tons of sports going on right now. Click the link in the description below to get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to a $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit with PrizePicks. Alex, I always ask you while we're talking about PrizePicks, if there are any PrizePicks that you particularly like this week. I can, of course, pull a couple up if you don't have one at the ready. Have you given any look at the PrizePicks props for this weekend yet?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in some props. Okay. It's definitely looking like a tough week for props, to be honest. But Justin Fields over completions, maybe. Like I guess Detroit's passing defense isn't very good at all. They're probably one of the worst in the league. So Chicago, even though they do run so much, like it's not a guarantee that they're going to be leading this game. Detroit's offense has been competent. This is their defense that's horrific, right? So you could see more passing attempts from Justin Fields than we saw last week. So some overs on Justin Fields lines could be interesting.
Yeah, we've got 14.5 completions for Justin Fields, so a pretty low total that you need to get over there. I like that call. That could definitely work out. Looking at, let's see, past TDs. Interesting. Patrick Mahomes, 2.5 pass touchdowns. Do you have any feel in one way or the other as far as 2.5 passing touchdowns for Mahomes?
So these on PrizePicks are interesting because there's no juice on either side. So when you do have a line of a prop, that's pretty close. to 0, like 2.5. It could be advantageous. However, it looks like we have projected Mahomes for 2.5 touchdowns
Okay.
passing. So like in this case, there's not really much here.
Yeah, not one that you're going to be targeting there necessarily because it's his projections right in line. All right. That sounds good. Let's move on. Talk about some wide receivers then. Obviously, we've already talked about quarterbacks, so we can probably spend less time on individual wide receivers because we're going to be playing a lot of stacks. But let's talk about just talk about the ownership a little bit, guys who are getting a little bit of ownership, any chalk that you're willing to eat at wide receiver, and any big fades for you at wide receiver among the chalkier guys.
Well, Tyreek Hill is a great option always. Like it seems like his target share has been ridiculous in Miami this year. And it's a team that loves to pass the ball and it's really good at doing so. So there's really no holes to be found in Tyreek Hill. He has a 32% target share this year. So that's like significantly up from Kansas City where he's at 25%. So that just means he's about as close, like I don't want to use the word lock with receivers, but it's like he can get there even without touchdowns. He's getting like 160 yards and crazy stuff. Um, Especially if Cooper Kupp is being thrown to by John Wolford, where it's really hard to count on him continuing his success with the quarterback change. So we'll have to see if Matthew Stafford plays. Which ones are standing out to you among the chalk?
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you that because we might have Case Keenum throwing to Stephon Diggs, John Wolford throwing to Cooper Kupp. Do we just condense our ownership at the top, then maybe play more Tyreek Hill? I think that does make some sense to me. He is the most expensive, so I look at it, I'm like, man, Tyreek Hill is more expensive than Cooper Kupp, and getting more ownership. I like feel naturally I want to play more Cooper Kupp, but if it's not Matthew Stafford in there, then Cooper Kupp obviously it's a huge downgrade for him. So I think yeah, I'm probably going to condense a little bit to Tyreek Hill just because all of the other high end options are just not in great spots in terms of quarterback play. Do you worry at all that the field is going to get there too, though? Like maybe everybody thinks the same way and the ownership goes, Diggs's ownership goes from 12.6 down to 7.6 and Cooper Kupp's goes from 16.4 to 11.4. We end up with 27% Tyreek Hill. Do you have concerns that that's going to happen, or do you think the field is not quite as sharp as I'm giving them credit for?
No, it makes sense. I mean, if the options around Tyreek aren't as good, it's going to increase his ownership. So, uh, yeah, it's like Kupp and Diggs. If they are with backup quarterbacks, it's kind of like maybe stackable only, but not one-offs. But Tyreek could, I guess, the pivot would be to Devontae Adams potentially or Justin Jefferson. So there's some reasonable options around the similar price point, but he is projected to be optimal more than twice the other guys. So you're making a pretty big sacrifice if you pivot off him.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I think we're on the same page. Tyreek Hill being some chalk that we're willing to eat. I think that we're also probably on the same page that if these guys stay at their same ownership, not really playing with the field on Cooper Kupp and Stephon Diggs, would you agree with that? If they're getting double-digit ownership and their starting quarterbacks are not in, you're not going to be getting there.
Well, it's going to definitely affect their ownership if the quarterbacks are out. So, I don't know if everyone's going to pay attention to that when drafting, but a lot of people are. So, I feel like it's tough because like both numbers are going to be shifting.
Yeah, that's fair. So we'll have to kind of pay attention there. We have a lot of shows going up until lock on Sunday. So watch those shows to get updated information as far as ownership projections and optimal odds. All right. I feel like we've talked about the chalkier guys a bit. Let's jump into the contrarian options at wide receiver. Anybody stand out to you as somebody you want to play who's not getting much ownership?
CD Lamb, maybe he's not getting a ton of ownership. He's kind of expensive, but this Dallas game, it seems like no one's on Dallas this week. They have a 24-point team total, so that's one of the higher ones on the slate. They're favored versus Green Bay, so there's likely to be some good fantasy scores in this game. No one's on any of the players, so that's a opportunity that I'm going to try to take advantage of. Noah Brown also looks to be a pretty good value. He's questionable this week, so we'll have to see if he does kind of be ruled in before Sunday, his ownership probably goes up. So we'll have to see on that. But it looks like CD Lamb's a pretty interesting one-off.
Yeah, for sure. CD Lamb looks good in the tools. 8% projected ownership, 12% optimal. So he looks great. Jalen Waddle also looks up. I mean, we talked about how much we like Tyreek Hill. You could also play some Jalen Waddle. He's 7,600. We have him at 9.3% projected ownership, 10.4% chance of being optimal. Do you see yourself going there in some lineups, maybe even outside of stacks?
Yeah, I mean, he's been fantastic this year. The only threat to him is Tyreek Hill getting more of the targets. So I think any week he's liable to have a huge game. The other guy that's really jumping out to me is Wan'Dale Robinson. He's been in the last 2 weeks, he had 81% of routes and 85% of routes. The only change this week is Kenny Galladay is coming back. But Kenny Galladay isn't like at all the same type of receiver as Wan'Dale, where I feel like Kenny Galladay is more likely to impact Marcus Johnson and Darius Slayton's routes than Wan'Dale. So it seems like everyone's off Wan'Dale, and he's pretty interesting.
Thank God. I had not heard that Kenny Galladay is coming back to save all of my best ball lineups. He is, I think, my highest owned wide receiver. So could use him putting up a good game at some point this year. Interesting. We talked about Kansas City a little bit, and you said that you have interest in maybe Kelsey. And did you say MVS? Because MVS looks pretty good. Just 4,100. People in chat saying that he sucks, as we were talking about him earlier. Maybe he does suck, but he's 4,100 with Patrick Mahomes throwing in the ball. 5.3% projected ownership. You have any interest there?
Definitely. I mean, we see random guys go off like bananas for Kansas City every week. So Hardman, he had a game of 28 points and 20 points in the last 2 weeks. So everyone's going to be like, Hardman's the guy, right? But if you actually look at the snap counts, they played about the same amount. So the only threat is, MVS played a lot more, 72% to 56%. Like I do feel like Hardman, maybe it's just because he's like running like the go routes, so maybe that means he has to get taken off the field for breathers more. For MVS, like I feel like MVS also like runs that type of route though, so I'm not really sure. Tony coming in, like I guess that could disproportionately affect MVS because he hasn't been producing. So really, it comes down to what you think is going to happen with Kadarius Toney on this team.
Yeah, I've been playing MVS all year, and it's getting harder and harder to do. And now we're throwing Kadarius Toney into the mix, but the price keeps coming down. It's just like I was saying with Kyle Pitts the other week. It was like I've been playing him for 2 straight years, and he's been disappointing me, and yet I can't get myself not to play him. And then finally, he had a decent game, not amazing, but he had like 19 fantasy points. I think I'm probably going to play some MVS here at low ownership, but just kind of have to hold your nose.
Can we talk about how Pitts totally broke our tight end and showdown algorithm yesterday?
Right, he was in such a prime spot to just continue the trend, just like your tight end on showdown, and he did absolutely nothing. He's been disappointing. Definitely. It was hurtful by Pitts. And then on the other side, who do we have? Oh, we had none of the tight ends. We had literally 0 tight ends do anything last night, because I also had interest in, I don't remember, Tommy Tremble. I had some Tommy Tremble, and he didn't really do anything either. It was just maybe it's just kickers in showdown now. I think that's the thing this year. We've been talking about kickers in showdown. Last night I went away from it because of the weather, as we talked about, and then of course we had Pinheiro put up 4 field goals or something, so kicked me once again, the kickers in showdown.
Yeah, you'd think defense would have done a little bit better, but
yeah,
I guess defense was optimal, but it was kicker night.
Yeah, for sure. And then we had Koo, who had not missed like 72 straight extra points, misses 2. So it was clearly affecting him, but not affecting Eddie Pinheiro for some reason. So anyway, we'll stop venting about last night. Any other quarterbacks that you want to touch on? Nope. All right, then we will move on, talk about some tight ends, defenses, GPP stacks. But first, we've got another offer that I want to tell you. So if PrizePicks is available in your state, we already talked about PrizePicks. This BetMGM offer probably is not. I think there's very little overlap between the two. But if PrizePicks is not available in your state, you do have legal betting. We've got a great offer for you from BetMGM. You'll get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum with this deal when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10 on BetMGM. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher. It's a $240 value, just a phenomenal deal. All you need to do is click the link in the description or in chat, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more, and place a bet of $10 or more as well, and on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your free subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. And on top of all of that, you also get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That means that if you win the bet, you win the bet. Whatever the payout is, you just get that payout. If you lose the bet, you just get $1,000, up to $1,000, whatever you bet, up to that amount in free bet. So it's just a phenomenal deal from BetMGM. It's legit free money and a free subscription to the best DFS tools in the world. These are the tools that I use every day. I know, Alex, you use the tools exclusively. Just a great offer from BetMGM. Reminder though, make sure that you do use the link, because if you don't use that link, we won't be able to track it. So use the link in the description. All right, moving on to tight ends. Alex, let's start at the top. Once again, the top of the ownership. Chalk you're willing to eat, fades among those higher owned guys. How are you feeling about tight ends this week?
I feel like there's some good options. Like Foster Moreau is really jumping off the page right now. He's 3,200 on DK. And his target share has been 18% this year, which is significant. It's over a significant amount of playing time too. He's been out there running routes 88% of the plays, 95% the last 2 weeks. So I feel pretty confident in the target share and the playing time with Darren Waller on the IR. So he's my number one when it comes. Obviously, Kelsey, if you have the money, like it's just like the line construction is so different because he costs 7,800 on DK and the next highest is 5,300. So it's like Kelsey rules, obviously, but like there's not a lot of value plays to support playing him. And he's good. Like I feel like the Kansas City stack's gonna be pretty popular. So I don't know. What are the chalk plays you're looking at this week?
Yeah, so yeah, Foster Moreau certainly interesting. Travis Kelsey, I think I'm probably gonna play some Kelsey. Now we've got Njoku ruled out, so we're gonna have to update this. My guess is Harrison Bryant will come up as somewhat chalky, but also as a great play. He's only 2,700. I think I'm gonna have some interest in Harrison Bryant, even if he is a little bit chalky. The other one that I kind of want to talk about, Tyler Higbee. Now, obviously, I think our tools is still assuming Matthew Stafford in. So Tyler Higbee looks phenomenal. 9.3% projected ownership, 18.1% optimal. Would you agree with me, though, that that's a little bit fragile, even if Stafford is in? Just looking at Tyler Higbee's game log, I mean, the first 5 games of the year, he had 11 targets, 9 targets, 4 targets, 14, 10. The past 3, just 2, 6, and 1. So it feels to me like they've gone away from Tyler Higbee a little bit. Do you see it differently? Is that just maybe a happenstance thing that he has not been targeted as much recently, or do you think that they are kind of just going away from him a little bit?
I mean, football's wild, and there's a lot of outliers. So I usually look at the season long performance as the best predictor of future outcomes because nothing has really changed on this Rams team. The one constant on the Rams has been they are absolutely horrible at running the football, and they're really bad at pass blocking too. So like a lot of times you see them do absolutely nothing. So it's incredibly frustrating. It's interesting, like with Wolford, where maybe like since he's a like more athletic quarterback, like maybe like the Rams could have even more success, like given the state of the offensive line. But the passing share is probably or passing rate's going to go down, so that's going to hurt Higbee. The team total is probably going to go down too, like despite maybe some reason for optimism. So, yeah, Higbee it's a lot tougher to get to him if Wolford starts.
Okay. Another play that I sort of think I might have interest in is TJ Hawkinson. So involved in his very first game with the Vikings last week. Like he had a great game, breakout game. Now he's 5,300. It's not the best spot in the world against Buffalo. It's obviously a tough defense, but maybe the Vikings are going to throw the ball a little bit more. We've got Hawkinson projected for 4.3% projected ownership, 3.7% optimal. Do you have any interest in TJ Hawkinson on a new team, second game there after having a great first game?
I think with Hawkinson, like the main impetus for getting him was that Irv Smith was injured, right? So, like, I don't think this is all about like upgrading the offense necessarily. I think it's more about just finding a replacement for Irv Smith. So, Hawkinson is a talented player, like no doubt, but he's on a team with a lot of great players. So, I'm not sure if my expectation for Hawkinson is going to be any different than if you were on Detroit. So, you know, a few more games like last week could change my mind because 9 for 9 for 70 is pretty good. What have you seen about Hawkinson?
He makes the Vikings an immediate Super Bowl contender. Just a fun. No, yeah, that was my read as well. Like, I mean, they did give up a couple. What did they give up? A couple second rounds. I'm trying to remember what it was exactly. I have trouble with football trades. Like every draft pick is like more meaningful as opposed to like basketball, where it's like, yeah, I'll give up infinite second rounders. Who cares? Trying to find what the actual details of the trade were, but I think they gave up some valuable draft equity for Hawkinson. He was I believe, a first round pick. So he's got some talent. I think I just want to believe that he's going to be a difference maker for the Vikings. We haven't really seen it though. We've been expecting TJ Hawkinson to be a difference maker for a couple of years now, and he just has not broken out in the way we expected. So maybe it's wishful thinking on my part to think that the Vikings is just going to change everything for Hawkinson. Yeah, so maybe not the best play in the world. We'll have to wait and see. But if you want to, beat the field to it, maybe it is a real thing. If you want to believe it's a real thing, you might have to get there now. But yeah, I'm not super confident in Hawkinson. Dawson Knox, another guy, 3,300. If Josh Allen is in there, you can play some Dawson Knox. I'm going to be a little bit less interested, I think, if Case Keenum is in there. Would you go there at all if Case Keenum's there? 3,300 for Dawson Knox. Sometimes, a quarterback who has not been playing a lot, rookie quarterbacks in particular, are more likely to target a tight end. But maybe Case Keenum coming in hasn't played all year. Maybe he would. I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Any interest in Dawson Knox?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely see some more running back targets, some more tight end targets, less Gabe Davis targets, like at the super downfield. Like that'd probably be a reasonable expectation. But the overall team's projections may go down a lot with the quarterback change. So it's like Knox is priced for Josh Allen, and if he's playing with Case Keenum, that's a tough pill to swallow. So that'd probably be a fade for me.
Okay. And then just one more. Mike Gesicki looks pretty good in the tools. We've talked about this Miami stack as being a little bit expensive in general, but Gesicki just 3,500, 3.5% projected ownership, 7% chance of being optimal. Do you like Gesicki this week?
A little bit. Like the playing time has been all over the place. It was up to like the 2/3 to 3/4 of plays like for a few weeks, and the last two it's been between 50 and 60%. So he's just not out there as much as other tight end options. But the Dolphins passing offense is very good. So he's a guy that I probably favor if I have Tua in my lineup, but otherwise he's not a one-off that I'm really gonna go to.
Okay. Any other tight ends you want to touch on?
I mean, we could spend all day talking about tight ends here.
I know we could.
But
I also know that you want to talk about defenses for an hour, so we should. Should we move on? All right, then let's just. Do you have anything that you want to say about defenses this week? Anybody that stands out to you as a defense you want to play, a fade for you among defenses? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota, if it's Case Keenum, they're almost min priced, so that's going to be super chalk and tough to get away from. Let's look at Keenum's interception rate real quick, because this is a guy we have a lot of data on. Only 2.2%, so better than average as far as preventing turnovers. That one could be fadeable for that reason, even though it is backup QBs. Like you're really hoping for those interceptions and sacks, and if they're running the ball more and he's not turnover prone, that could be fool's gold right there. So the other thing I'm thinking about is like who are the most popular offenses. Like the Lions defense could be intriguing because Justin Fields is going to be very popular, and I'm not convinced he's a great player. So if they're in a game script where Chicago is behind, I could see a lot of mistakes. So I was like picking on those defenses against like the chalk QB.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's just great leverage in that spot, and they look good just in a vacuum. 3.4% projected ownership, 4% chance of being optimal, even when you don't factor in the leverage. So that makes sense to me. Looks like in the tools, it kind of looks like, if I'm reading this right, we are maybe at least somewhat factoring in the potential backup quarterback, because we've got Vikings number 1, Cardinals number 2 going up against potentially Wolford, coming in at 9.2% projected ownership, 10.3% chance of being optimal. So these defenses against backup quarterbacks are looking interesting this week. But I'm with you. The Vikings defense, if they're going to be that high owned, certainly fadeable. Do you think you would be playing any Cardinals defense against John Wolford if he's the starting quarterback?
Oh yeah, I mean, defense versus the Rams has been a great play this year because the Rams' offensive line just has not been up to par. So, like moving to John Wolford, who has a career 5% interception rate, like although it's only over 40 passes, but he's on 2 interceptions and an equivalent of like 1 game. So, uh, like it definitely encouraging that like you could see a huge defensive performance from the opposing team. So I always like picking on quarterbacks that are unproven like that.
Okay, so maybe somewhat better chalk on the Cardinals defense if in fact it is chalky. Okay, well that'll do it for position by position. Let's just talk some top stacks. Do you have a favorite stack or two for large field GPPs that stand out to you as the first place you'd go?
Yeah, I guess Miami. Like everyone's going to Cleveland or Kansas City because Mahomes is fantastic, right? But it's almost like Tua has been like just as good this year. He's been averaging a ridiculous, like more than 8 yards per pass, which is fantastic. I think that's even higher than Mahomes. So, like both teams love the love the pass the ball. Miami passes 61% in neutral scripts. Kansas City 63%. So those are almost equivalent. And then in Miami, like it's almost the same thing where you got Tyreek Hill, who's like the number 1 stack option, just like Kelsey. So it's like these teams are very equivalent in a lot of ways. Like the big difference is Mahomes is 15% owned, while Tua is only 9%. So I kind of favor Miami there. But we talked about some contrarian ones as well. What are you thinking?
Yeah, for sure. I think Tua just looks pretty phenomenal. I mean, we have talked about all of these stacks a little bit. We went over all the stacks pretty extensively when talking about quarterbacks, but yeah, I thought Dallas seemed interesting. You brought up Dallas as an interesting stack. I think that I'll have some interest there. I probably will give the Vikings a few shots just because Kirk is coming in at 1.8% projected ownership as a contrarian option. Yeah, I think I might go to some of those Chiefs stacks as well. Maybe I think I actually am going to do some Trevor Lawrence stacks, even though we have slight negative leverage. I mean, we have essentially neutral leverage on Trevor Lawrence when you look at top value odds. So I think that Trevor Lawrence is somebody that is actually going to interest me. And I think you can include Travis Etienne in a double stack with Lawrence as well. So I think that's one that interests me.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, it sucks. The only thing that sucks is we've got to wait till Sunday to collect our $1 million.
Exactly. That's the worst part. Always waiting for that money to come on Sunday, that inevitable milli that we're gonna be winning. All right, Alex. Any final words for the audience?
No, just this one. It's looking like a fun one. Like the most interesting thing we've seen so far this week is there's really no like value options yet. In fact, like guys are getting worse value because they're going to worse quarterbacks. So we'll see if anything opens up. We'll be the first to let you guys know, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Catch our Sunday Live Before Lock, where we give you all the updated information. And we got the free 3-day trials to the site that you should definitely take advantage of. That will get you through the Monday night slate. So there's a great value on that.
Absolutely. And Stephen Leibowitz pointed out Titans ruled out a bunch of defensive guys, might look again at Russell Wilson. That's interesting. Yeah, maybe that'll be something we should look at again. But as Alex said, you can check out all the shows leading up to lock on Sunday. I'm sure that they'll talk more extensively about those defensive matchups and such. And while you're here, also remember, check out the Odd Shopper YouTube channel if you haven't already. It's got everything you need to make sure you are maximizing your profits. You can shop bets, create your own parlay using our parlay builder, find arbitrage opportunities, and of course, most importantly, you can shop bets to find the best price available not the Odd Shopper YouTube channel, that's Odd Shopper itself on the Stokastic channel. So check that out if you haven't already. And of course, as Alex said, subscribe to this channel. We've got a lot of great shows coming the rest of the day. We've got some no advantage shows, and then of course the NBA deeper dive live before lock coming up later. So check those out. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck this weekend.